Thank you. Hi, I'm Chris from the Sidekick. We publish class projects that solve real company problems, engaging students and preventing dropouts. So I'm going to throw up a question and see how many of you guys relate to this. When am I ever going to use this? A lot of us relate to this question because our kids have asked it, or maybe we asked it when we were in high school. And it's kind of like a funny, nostalgic rite of passage if you graduate. If you don't graduate, this is called disengagement, and it's the single largest driver of dropouts in the United States. Now, before students leave the education system entirely, they stop at the last line of defense, not the first line of defense, the last line of defense, which are alternative schools. And despite the fact that these schools are designed for at-risk kids, despite the fact that we spend 25% more on these students, the chance of them graduating is less than a flip of a coin. This is Sidekick's battleground. We want to help teachers turn that 45 to 100. And now, 8 and 10 teachers already know what to do. If kids don't see the point, give them the point. Give them a real-world project. And Bill is one of these teachers. He's a math teacher, so he gave us a formula on how to explain this. Have students work on meaningful work. So the example that's on the screen is a real example. It's a Sidekick project, and students are designing modifications to a drone to deliver medical supplies to remote areas in Lesotho. Meaningful work means building something that somebody else can use. And the other thing you need is that somebody else. So in our case, that was Rob from the Kellogg Global Health Initiative. He met with these students, presented the problem of last mile distribution of medical supplies, gave feedback along the way, and then collected the designs at the end. Having real connections tells kids that you care. And if you have meaningful work and real connections, engagement soars, and you can increase graduation rates by up to 50%. And yet no one is doing this because it takes 5 times longer than traditional lesson planning. Now, it's not hard to explain, and Bill did a pretty good job of it himself. Just creating a task that matters takes a crazy amount of time because you still have to fit it to standards, and you still have to fit it into a schedule. And then even finding a partner in the first place takes an investment of building that network with time that teachers don't have. So naturally, this is just out of reach. But Sidekick does all of this in seconds. So teacher can log onto our app and search our database of projects that are aligned to standards and solve a problem that's interesting to their students. Next, you download a project packet that's still fully customizable, and that's very important to teachers, but will give you the tasks and the assessments that you need to run this in class. And then finally, you can follow along by following your students as they interact with the people behind the projects on our online platform. Now, if this should work if it's increasing engagement, and that's exactly what we're seeing. I love this quote from Bill because what it means is that we're hitting the kids that we're meaning to hit. But we also measured this, and we saw a 5 times increase in student engagement. But best of all, this is only 20 bucks a kid for a single subject, which is exactly how you kind of price textbooks per subject. So at a quarter of the cost, you're getting 5 times the benefit. We can do this because we've cracked the content problem. So behind our projects, there is a network of partners, and these partners are everything from nonprofits to government entities to companies that are interested in STEM education, like GM. They see us as a free, turnkey education initiative. So for instance, Rob saw this as an opportunity to raise awareness about last mile distribution, which is something he really cares about. So Rob filled out a project brief, which is really just a Google form that takes me 2 minutes to do, and it took Rob 5 minutes to do. And that creates a set of documents in our database. And we pump those documents into a pipeline of machine learning algorithms. That sole job is to parse out in those project briefs, what are the assessments, what are the tasks, what are the standards that are baked into that project already. So we take that output, and we slot it into our template, and that's the project handbook that we hand to our teachers. This is only possible because of the team. My background is in data science. I'm the one actually building those machine learning algorithms. Ashwin has done this all before. And then Sarah is our ed expert. She tells us what teachers actually need and how to get schools to say yes. And we must be doing something right because people are paying us. So we've secured 3 licenses so far for a total revenue of $9,000, and we've been able to affect the lives of 500 students already. So we think we have something that works, and we'd like to take it to market. And what we're learning from our customers is that yes, student disengagement is a huge problem in alternative schools, but it's bad everywhere. And so they're coming to us and saying, can you talk to our superintendent and get this into the traditional high school as well? So, and the other thing to note is that 9 in 10 superintendents consider disengagement their top priority. And that means that some of the students are not going to the alternative program at all. So if we're going to reach our stakeholders, we're going to have to go into this market. And we're happy to, because there's a lot of money in it. Now, I'm not going to kid you guys. You all know education sales suck. They're a slog. I'm not going to say it's easy either, but I will say that we have a way to do it. And it's actually nice that we have these alternative schools. They're a great way to start. Because in an alternative school, you usually only have one decision maker. It's usually a head teacher. And we start them off with a single subject license. So it's an easy bite to swallow to start with. We can close that sale into 3 months. And then the nice thing is that these alternative schools are embedded within a traditional district. So we now have a relationship with that superintendent. So instead of selling into the district, we sell up to the district. At that point, we can start looking for margin. And so we look across the curriculum for a 4-subject license at $80 a student. That works out for an average school to be about $72,000 per year. And if I have more time, I'm going to come back to this, I promise. But the key takeaway is that this is the right time. There are some interesting state laws coming out that are saying you basically have to do what Sidekick does. So we're going to start with those states. But back to that $72,000. Once we get them there, we become quite profitable. For a single year, while we can earn $72,000, it only costs around $17,000 to serve a single account. Most of that is wrapped up in teacher support. This is standard for the industry, and then product support when teachers have questions. With those numbers, that gives us, if you can do the math, a 76% gross margin. And in those assumptions, we can reach cash flow positivity in 2020, 20 million in revenue in 2022, and we can add 135,000 graduates in 2022. That, if you follow the math, that's a quarter of our target population for these stakeholders, which I think is a really big deal because we've been talking a lot about graduation, but that's not really what we're talking about. Sidekick isn't a credit recovery tool. We're a story rewriting tool. And the math kind of plays this out. So these dropouts that are going from these alternative schools join a group called the Opportunity Youth. These are people that have no job, no education, and collectively, through the prison system and the healthcare system, they're costing each and every one of us $1,000 a year in social services. And what's really cool is that if we can plug this pipeline, this Opportunity Youth pipeline, and get these kids graduated through income taxes and sales taxes alone, we completely flip that sign. That's pretty cool. And I think I have some time, so right now, here's where I would close. But I'm gonna go back and explain those numbers to you because I know you're gonna ask about them. The other key point to mention here, like I said, there are these state laws coming out that say students need a project-based learning experience or a career-connected experience to graduate. These are enacted now. Schools in the 2019 year have to have these programs in place. Schools are scrambling for a solution. We are that solution. The other cool thing to notice here is that this is trending up. We're seeing this law come in states throughout the nation. So once we start close, near to home, where our home base is in Chicago, then we can start thinking more broadly throughout the nation in other states, like here in California, they're considering this law. And they've just added this in Oregon as well. If we run out of states, which I really doubt we will because more states continue to add them, the other really interesting place we can go is in project-based learning networks. There's a couple of really cool ones that started over in San Francisco, in Summit, as many of you might be familiar with, and High Tech High. These are great partners for us because they already understand this, and we just allow them to do it 1,000 times faster. Now, I will say, it's pretty cool that we can flip that sign. Let's change some stories.
Nice job. Love the passion and love the impact. So I've got two main questions. The first is really around the product. I don't quite have my head around the product and what it is, how it works, and how you know it works. And then I have a second follow-up on the market.
Cool. Let's start with the product. The how you know it works, I'm not quite sure, so I'll ask about elaboration for that
What's
as
that?
well. Could you just potentially elaborate on how you know it works?
What evidence do you have that it's working to get them to engage?
Yeah, great. So the product itself essentially it's a project packet. It's a Google Doc or Word doc or a PDF at the end of the day, because we can create as many cool interfaces as we want. In fact, that's where we started. The teacher wants a Google Doc that they can edit themselves and add their own flavor to. So that's what we're giving them now. They do find that through an app that we built, and that they just kind of search for using natural language, such as I need something for English, I need something for Algebra 1. That'll pull up projects that would match based on the fact that there are certain standards for that course. These are state standards, like a student must be able to draw a linear line kind of thing. These are baked into those projects. So if you think about it, in the case of the drone, to us, that looks like an engineering problem. To our algorithm, it looks like a systems of linear inequalities problem. And so you search for systems of linear inequalities, you pull up this drone project, and you can download that project packet. That's essentially the product.
When you say search for, you mean search for on your inventory of projects, or
yeah.
what? So, and how are you creating all these different projects?
Like I said, we have a network of 60 partners so far. GM, Hyatt, a lot of the Boeing, some of these are based in Chicago, which is where we're based, as well as we have a ton of nonprofits that love this stuff because they have missions that they want to get out there, and this is a good way to reach, the 14 to 18 segment of the population. So they come to us, and we're free. So we're kind of like a Catch-a-Fire or some of these other employee engagement platforms, but you don't pay for us. So we're kind of just easy education initiative for these partners. All they have to do is fill out that form, and we have a project that they can work with. Does that answer the question?
Sort of. I'm still not quite getting my head around how you create. I mean, is it lesson plans? Is it curriculums?
It is. It's a project plan. It is the
who's
equivalent.
creating it though? You said GM's creating it, or someone on your team is creating it?
What GM fills, it's 5 questions. It says, what's the problem? Give me 2 lines for what's the problem. How did you get here? What do you want at the end? Is there anything else you want? Basically, they fill that out. What we do is we have a template already. That's a standing document. The algorithm itself plugs those 2 together. It looks for the pieces in that project brief that would fit into the slots that we have in our template, if that makes sense.
Okay. And then follow-up quick question, just on the market. You're talking about going to, I mean, the price point per school is quite attractive at $72,000, but I wonder about the size of your market. Because these are special schools, right? I can't remember the term you used, but these are not your typical K through 12 schools, right, or high schools. Right. It's alternative schools. Mm-hmm. And how many of those are there in the United States, and what does 300 represent of the overall number? So there are 10,000 alternative school programs. Okay. Most of these there are a lot of standalone schools within the district, and then there are also schools within schools. So it's an alternative program that sits within the same building that the rest of the high school is as well. So 300 is 3% of that. The point that we're now recognizing is that our customers are telling us, actually, your market isn't alternative schools, your market is all high schools. And so we're really looking toward, if we're going to be profitable and we're going to make this at scale, then we're looking at the 37,000 high schools throughout the nation, in which case at 300 schools, that's 1%. Yeah. All right. Nice.
Can you just talk a little bit more about the product? So you're probably familiar with Teachers Pay Teachers. It's grown dramatically over the last few years. It would seem that these project-oriented, or real-world-oriented projects are applicable to just a smaller subset of coursework. Can you just kind of compare the two, and how, why wouldn't you just go to Teachers Pay Teachers and pay $20 for a lesson for the drone?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question. I've never been asked that question before. We don't necessarily have a problem with putting our stuff on Teacher Pay Teachers to start with. But however, what I will say is this is where we are today. This is not where we want to be. Every project that gets run, that online platform we showed, we're collecting events from students. So what we'll be able to do that Teachers Pay Teachers will never be able to do is say, okay, this is how the project should work for Bobby. And this is how the project should work for Sarah. That is where we eventually want to be, where we're not just doing project-based learning, we're doing personalized project-based learning.
You already touched on the sales cycle and that it's a slog, so it sounds like you're well aware. You've sold into 3 schools so far?
Yeah.
How long did those sales cycles
So they all have been within that 3-month mark that I mentioned.
Okay.
They're all alternative schools as well.
Okay.
They've all been within that 3-month mark. We are currently in the process of upselling into those, and we've estimated that to be about basically hit the next academic year.
And so what's the budget line item that you're coming out of, and,
Yep.
and what percentage is that, and what are you displacing?
Yep. The tough thing, and this is why education sucks, is you're always a replacement. There's no addition most of the time. So we're in the instructional materials budget. About $600 per student gets spent in this. Most of that is going to your LMS because Canvas gets just a crazy amount of that money, and Blackboard gets a crazy amount of that money. And then other services like like Eureka Math or things like these. They're like online specific products. So we think we're a replacement for that. We only, at a $20 price point, we're only 3%. So hopefully you're not giving up too much to be able to bring us in, and we're a lot better. The cool thing, though, about, as I mentioned, these new states that are enacting these new laws, they're also creating these little grant funds for this. And so there's a new line item potentially in these states to, like, we need to implement a project-based learning program, add that to the budget, and so we're going to target that as well going forward.
Can you speak more about the engagement? You mentioned GM. So they submit 5 questions. They
Yep.
have a project out there. What's the selection process for which teams or schools are working on the project? And then kind of follow up, how do they, I guess, get the information back about where did the project end up?
Yep. Also a great question, and that is something. I'm going to answer a different question, like the politicians do. Right now, we don't charge the partners, as we call them, because we want to build that base. We want them to come to us. We do think there's a premium opportunity in the future on the corporate sponsorship side as well, with impact reporting specifically. So we've consciously chosen not to give them anything explicitly to start with. If they ask, then we just manually work with them and say, yeah, here's, you've had 150 students working on this, and here's like a verbatim from the teacher. That's kind of what we've done so far. But we're kind of withholding because we think we might be able to monetize that a little bit. And there was another part of your question that I feel like I didn't answer.
It was just, there could be, I mean, when you scale out, I don't know, 50 classrooms working on this project, and if I'm GM,
Yep.
I'm like, I don't really want to deal with 50 different schools.
That is built into the project packet itself. So there's actually instructions in that just say, okay, as a class, come together and pick your favorite project. And then GM only sees 1 to 3, basically. There was another part to that I wanted to answer, but it's okay, hopefully.
Can you get back to your growth strategy slide?
Sorry?
The go-to-market growth strategy slide?
Yeah.
So
Nope.
That's fine. This is great. So 300 schools, 900 students per school, 270,000 students. Seems great, but the population of schools is 10. You said 10,000?
So the alternative schools, there's
alternative
10,000.
schools and others.
Yep.
So the question is, this is a nice ramp, but is there a way you can add a 0? How would you go about adding a 0
Yeah.
to that 2022 number, a factor of 10 on each of those?
We could hire more.
Is it all about just having more salespeople and adding people to the mix?
It really could be. As far as if we want to plug in that equation, we'll make that number bigger. The one problem that does cap us is these sales cycles are going to be long, and so we can't. There's just some limit to how much we're going to be able to grow. Like I said, we can plug into our Excel model and make that number to be whatever we want. Reasonably, I'm just spitballing here. Reasonably, I don't think we'd be able to break 4 digits in 5 years. We can still be very profitable in 5 years, but we can't break 4 digits. All right. Thank you, guys.
Great.